All right, today we're diving into an idea that could completely flip how you see, well, everything. We're talking about process and reality, and this wild idea of seeing the universe not as a collection of things, but as a verb.
So let's start with a big one. What if reality isn't actually made of things, but of events? I mean, really think about that. You look around, you see nouns, right? A chair, a phone, a person. But what if that's all just a trick of perception? What if, underneath it all, the universe is just a constant flowing series of interconnected happenings?
This wild idea? It comes from a seriously profound book from 1929 called Process and Reality. Our guide here is the author, Alfred North Whitehead. And let me tell you, this book is famously tough, but it's an attempt to literally rebuild our entire picture of the cosmos from scratch, all based on this one powerful shift in thinking.
Okay, so let's dive into this radically different reality. And to get it, we really need to understand the guy who came up with it.
Yeah, so Alfred North Whitehead, he wasn't your typical philosopher sitting in an armchair. This is really important to get. The guy was a world-class mathematician. Before he ever got into all this metaphysics stuff, he was a giant in logic. Even co-wrote the famous Principia Mathematica with Bertrand Russell. So his philosophy, it isn't just some abstract daydream. It's built with the kind of rigor you'd expect from a mathematician who's trying to make sense of a universe that was being turned upside down by guys like Einstein.
So to really see what Whitehead was getting at, we've got to first talk about the way we normally see the world. Think of it like a default pair of glasses that most of us just have on without even knowing it.
And with those glasses on, what do we see? We see a world of static objects, right? Of substances. A rock is a rock. A person is a person. Simple. This idea actually goes way, way back to Aristotle. The basic thought is that the world is made of things that stick around. The thing itself is what's truly real, and whatever happens to that thing is kind of secondary.
And this really lays it all out, the huge clash in ideas. On one side, you've got the old view from Aristotle, static, enduring, independent things. But then look at Whitehead's view, dynamic, always becoming, and deeply interconnected. We're talking about a complete, total shift in how you see everything.
All right, you ready? Let's take off those old dusty glasses from Aristotle and try on Whitehead's pair. Things are about to get a lot more dynamic and, yeah, maybe a little weird.
So here it is, the absolute heart of his whole idea. For Whitehead, the number one rule of existence is creativity. He said reality is a constant creative advance into novelty. The universe isn't just sitting there. Nope, it's actively creating itself, moment by moment by moment. The most basic thing about existence is this constant push towards something new. It's all about becoming. What we think of as being is really just a freeze frame of that process.
Okay, so if the world isn't made of things, what is it made of? That's the big question, right? Whitehead's answer is that it's made of actual entities. You can think of these as his replacement for atoms. They're the real, final, bedrock facts of the world. But, and this is a huge but, there's a twist.
And the twist is that almost all of these actual entities aren't things at all. They are occasions of experience. Imagine them like these teeny tiny atomic drops of process. They're like little flashes of becoming that blink into existence for an instant and then they're gone, passing on what happened to them to the next moment. So reality in this view is this incredible waterfall of fleeting moments.
Now, this is super important. When Whitehead says experience, he's not talking about consciousness, like us thinking about stuff. Not at all. He's using the word in a much, much bigger way. For him, experience is just the basic process of one of these moments reacting to the moments that came before it. So, an electron's experience, it's just how it reacts to the electromagnetic field it's in. That's it.
Okay, I know what you're thinking. If reality is just this crazy storm of tiny, fleeting moments, then how in the world do we get stable things like rocks and trees and us? Well, this is where it gets really cool. Whitehead explains how these events build up, layer by layer.
So he breaks it down into different levels of complexity. At the very bottom, you've got super simple processes, like a wave of light moving through empty space. Then, those moments start to organize themselves into the stable patterns that we call a rock, or any inanimate matter. Go up another level, and they form living things. And then at the very top level, you get moments that are so complex that they can have conscious experience, like you seeing the color red.
So how do these individual moments clump together to start looking like an object? Well, they don't just float around randomly. They actually link up in structured groups. And Whitehead has a name for these collections, a nexus. This is kind of the first step toward building what we think of as a solid thing.
And that brings us to the big payoff. What we call a person, or a chair, or anything else, Whitehead calls an enduring physical object. What is that? It's a special kind of nexus that has a history. It's a continuous river of these moments, each one inheriting from the last in a stable pattern. So get this, you are not a thing. You are a vast, unbelievably complex society of these moments of experience, constantly recreating yourself from one instant to the next.
Wow, okay, that's a lot to take in. It's a fascinating model for sure, but you might be wondering, is this just some kind of philosophical game, or does it actually matter? Does it change how we see the world?
Oh, it absolutely matters. The implications are huge. For starters, it just dissolves some of those ancient philosophy problems, like the mind-body split. It also lines up surprisingly well with modern physics, like relativity and quantum mechanics. I mean, think about it. Quantum particles existing in a state of potential until they're measured, that sounds a whole lot more like becoming than being, doesn't it? It reveals a universe that is deeply interconnected, dynamic, and creative at its very core.
Let's just take that mind-body problem for a second. You know the old question, how can a physical brain create a non-physical mind? Well, in Whitehead's world, that's the wrong question. Mind and matter aren't two different substances. They're just two different ways of looking at the very same thing, that single, concrete moment of experience. So your brain isn't a thing that makes a mind. They're both just different angles on this underlying reality of events.
So, after all that, what's the big takeaway? What do we do with this? How does the world look now with these new glasses on?
Well, Whitehead himself had this famous kind of cheeky quote. He said that pretty much all of Western philosophy was just a series of footnotes to Plato. What he meant was that for over 2,000 years, everyone was basically playing in the sandbox that Plato and Aristotle built, a sandbox made of static, unchanging things. And here's the kicker. Whitehead wasn't trying to add another footnote. He was trying to tear out the pages and challenge the entire book. With process and reality, he wasn't just tinkering with the old model. He was throwing it out the window and starting from scratch, building a new foundation on process and becoming, not on static things and permanence.
So that brings us right back to where we started. I'll leave you with this question. When you look in the mirror, what do you see? Do you see a noun, a static thing that life happens to? Or do you see a verb, a process, a society of moments, a continuous act of becoming? Because in Whitehead's universe, you are not a noun. You are a verb. And thinking about that just might change everything.